Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. I have covered leaks in the past for PathOfExile and some of them have turned out to be hoaxes. I think this one is quite different. This one is very, very credible and has been commented on by GGG, with them saying basically that this is still up in the air and subject to change. So I think that this leak is real. I'll quickly outline what's happened and give you some information if you're interested in finding out more about the leaks. But of course, if you would prefer to just wait and see what comes out in the actual game when things are finalized, then you can do that as well. So, what has happened is that yesterday, Grinding Gear Games pushed a very, very, very large update to PathOfExile. For me, it was 7.5 gigabytes. Other people have reported getting between 5 and 6. This was a very large update that contained a whole bunch of new game files, presumably contains all of the Crucible-related artwork that's needed, Crucible-related sound effects, things along those sorts of lines. But one of the things that happens every time information like that is updated in the game client, there'll be individuals that have a look through all this information and work out what has changed. Some of this is English language, some of it is other languages, but this is a list that has been compiled of all of the things that look like they might be game information and that have changed. Now, some of this is things we already knew. New masteries, for example. There's lines in there that indicate the English language text of some of the new masteries. But there's a whole bunch of things that aren't necessarily that. Alright, now this is a last warning. This video is going to contain spoilers and discussions of the contents of the leaks from this point onwards. So if you're not interested in hearing that, this is the time to leave the video. And this pastebin has been compiled, which contains all of the things which look like they're new descriptive text that players might see. Now this does not contain numbers. So for example, you'll have things like weapons and shields found have 0% chance to be fractured, but this is lacking the context that would tell you exactly what that is. Now I believe this to be the new Crucible map-like object that's going to exist, that this is one of the possible mods you can get on that, but I'm not absolutely certain on that. And of course 0% is just a placeholder. This would be the text that would be displayed if you were to have such an item. Anyway, there's a whole lot of things here that look like they might be Crucible Passives. For example, Arc and Crackling Lance gain added cold damage equal to X% of mana cost if mana cost is not higher than the maximum you could spend. A whole bunch of things like that that look like they are new mechanics that are being added in some way for the Crucible expansion that haven't yet been revealed. I'll put links down in the description below to all of the relevant documents so you can have a bit of a peruse of them yourself. Some of these mods are drawbacks, and what a lot of us believe is going on here is that these are paired with one of the buffs, and they tend to have a transformative effect on the skill, rather than something that's an objective buff that cause the skill to do something completely different. For example, line 588 and line 590 probably go together. Stormblast, Icicle, and Pyroclast Mine have X% increased aura effect, and Stormblast, Icicle, and Pyroclast Mine deal no damage. These will then transform the effect of your Pyroclast Mine. Instead of your Pyroclast Mine being something that you cast as a skill to deal damage, instead the purpose of your Pyroclast Mine becomes as a debuff, and you probably don't actually intentionally detonate them at all. So that's an example of one of the changes that exist there, but there's a whole lot of things you can have a look through. Just be aware that everything here is both a subject to change and also subject to being misinterpreted. We could be reading a lot of this wrong, and we could be reading it right, but it might end up that it's different when it actually comes out. One last thing, it looks like GGG have solved any potential problems that might have come up with respect to items vendoring for an additional mirror of Kalandra, because they're going to vendor for an additional number of mirror shards instead. As long as it's not possible to get 10 or more on this number and also simultaneously get line 649 here, then we're fine in terms of any potential exploits there. That's all I got on these leaks. If you want to have a look at them, definitely go ahead. If you don't want to look at them, you've probably already turned off the video. May your Varlobs have interesting results.